And, now you've got the BE Act of number 53 of 2003. It was amended in 2013, and it will be amended again and again and then again. But they're doing it through the practice, the codes of good practice. So they don't necessarily change the law, they just change what's in the code of good practice. And that's just easier than pushing more amendment laws through Parliament, because it's going to become a difficult scenario for them to do that. Then you've got the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework and the Procurement Policy Act. Now, that was to pretty much government's way of giving business to black people through government. All right, so your level had to be correct and everything else so that you could do business with government. Now, that's oddly enough, guys, if you want to understand this, America, United States of America, also implemented a preferential procurement law. And also to a certain extent employment equity, because once the African Americans gained independence and freedoms and everything else, America also had to address how many people you employ. And because black people was never allowed to go up in different managerial positions, they were kept at the bottom. So their law pushed that you have to start, if the person should be a manager, that it should be a manager. It shouldn't be black and white. And they also had a preferential procurement system, but the system there was points-based and all those kind of things. It was actually a rewarding system and not a punitive system. Guys need to understand everything that all these new post-apartheid laws is actually punitive in nature and not rewarding in nature. Which means if you don't, you're going to lose. All right, you're going to be punished, you're going to be fined, you're going to be all this, you're going to lose your BE levels, you're going to do this. So it's not a system that's based on reward or based on merit or based on anything which is logical, to be damn honest. Because I would rather say I'll give people more points for spending more money, for doing more, for employing more. I would rather give them points for that than say to them, before you can get your points, you need to spend X. Now, in some cases, that X, just on training for a small company that does about 50 million Rand, and remember the training budgets or the training levels all based on your STL submissions and. So now they've got to spend 300,000 Rand on training. And the training has to be spent on the broader definition of black, which is your black, colored, and Indian. Now, it gets expensive and people can't spend that. All right, we know we can't. I mean, most business guys are struggling their asses off at the moment just to keep the bloody doors open. Now, for you to get your points, you need to go spend 300,000 Rand. And you must spend the minimum to get some points. Instead of, okay, well, you know what, I'll rather get points for the more I spend, the more points I get. Where it's more of a reward and you're not forcing. And it's socioeconomic. It doesn't help you just throw money at a charity or a social project or whatever the case might be, because again, the mismanagement and misappropriation of those funds are terrible in this country, and it's not, you can't just throw money at a situation and hope that it will make it better and that the people that manage it will make it better. It doesn't. I'm telling you, in some cases I find that charities keep people down and out, and in those homes and environments and whatever else, if you look at children's homes or you look at homeless shelters, those kind of things, those charities keep those people in that grip, because they know if you do that, people will give more money, because you're playing on people's emotions, people's care, empathy, and all that kind of things. And it's very sad, but I've seen it. Then there's other laws like the Prevention of Discrimination Act, number 4 of 2000. Now, this is a lot to do when a person looks at the Kill the Boy song, a person looks at using the derogative apartheid words in terms of Africans, all those kind of things. It's almost like making something hate speech, if you really want to look at it. It was legalizing what the government would do in terms of hate speech. So there's a lot that took place, and there's a lot of laws. And I know some commentators say there's about 47 laws which are race-based, and I can actually believe it. If you look at the Mining Act, Mining Charter, mining everything else, the BE's become such a big thing there that, and who you employ and how you employ them, it's become quite a draconian manner in which to do business, and that's why a lot of mines have decided they're not going to do any more capital expenditure in this country or expand. And a lot of our mines have now been sold to the Chinese and to the United Arab Emirates and. Now, guys, these are the laws, okay, which plays a fundamental role in the South African economic environment. Now, I've been speaking about the saying that this actually links everything. Now you can start to understand why, if you look at your compliance requirements, if you look at your reporting requirements, if you look at HR, why HR is such a very difficult thing to deal with. What my producer said, they actually read the other day that there's 145 race-based laws in South Africa. Now, I can't read them all. I'm sorry. I'm only one man, but I can actually believe it because it's plausible. You've got to understand, people that never actually were in control of a country when they started back in 1994, they tried to fix so much very quickly. And they didn't allow it to grow and to evolve and to, let the South African people decide for themselves how they would integrate with each other. The laws forced the integration. If you go and listen to my BEE cast and the video I did on my BEE studies and my thesis, you would realize that a lot was done to correct the past. But it was like, let's just throw laws at people and they have to comply. And if they don't comply, then we're going to penalize the crap out of them. And it's the same thing with your SARS laws and the Tax Administration Act. There's this big push to control and the government must have absolute control. And the National Party just with a new technicolored coat, to be very honest. It is, all these laws smell and reek of apartheid laws. And you can call it a new democratic dispensation as much as you want to. Now, as soon as you start drawing parallels, and we're talking about Section 25 of the Constitution, where they want to take away your right for ownership of your own property. I mean, doesn't that sound like the Natives Land Act and the Bantu Education Act when you look at the last act, the Bella Act that was passed? I mean, that's the Bantu Education Act just in a new form. The Group Areas Act, all those kind of things. Natives Land Act, that we're taking away black people's rights to property and putting them somewhere where nobody would see them. Is that not happening with the Section 25 argument? Is that not happening where there's another section which the MK party is trying to also change? And that was the last doorstop that was in place to stop. Even when Section 25 changes, that was the one little piece of the Constitution. I can't remember right now the chapter of it. But to ensure that you have rights to your own property, and nobody could take that away from you. And so you can understand that they're using what they know, and they know the apartheid laws. Now you just dress it up, give it a new name, make it look a little bit more democratic, make it look like it's now trying to redress past injustices. But it won't. It's just creating more injustice. And it's just dividing people more. I think South Africa is more divided today than it was under apartheid. And it is because laws are being used. People should just, at the end of the day, if you look at kids, I do a nursery school's books and I enjoy doing it because I go there every year for their Christmas concert at the end of the year. And those kids on that stage, I mean, white, black, Indian, everything else, have so much fun together. They don't know about race, they don't know about status, they don't know about anything. And the older we get jaded, we get all sorts, and road rage, and there's been so many cases of late where road rage goes crazy and people get shot and killed. I know about that. I mean, I drive the R21 every day of my life, so I know about people on their cell phones and ladies that sit like this on their steering wheels. I mean, and makeup, and they're eating in the car, and you know what? Plus the car, some of those cars, I was looking at a car yesterday, and the back wheel was going like this, and I'm like, good Lord, let me just say 100 meters behind this car, because if that wheel goes on a highway, we're going to have a problem. So why I did this is so that you understand that all the things we discussed, the compliance issues, SARS, labor, business advisory, BEE, all these kind of things, it flows out of these laws where they're trying to justify or correct past injustices. Now, I know from experience, if I remember when I did my PhD, there was 123 race-based laws under apartheid. But those laws, not all of them were ever enacted. They were passed, they were in law, but the ones that I mentioned is the ones that really impacted people's lives. Um, so a person's got to understand you can't continuously use the law. I think Margaret Thatcher, for all her good and worth, I know she was hated by, or is hated by most people, but you don't understand, if it wasn't for Britain, would not be Britain. And that's the reality of it. The economy would have crashed. They would have lost everything. So she had to administer medicine that did not taste nice. You know, that's one of her famous quotes. But a person's got to also understand what she said is government's position is not to legislate people and to take away freedoms and to not allow businesses to make decisions which is best for their businesses. And that's very true. You cannot legislate society in being together as such. You've got to leave people to do what they need to do. You've got to, for innovation, for entrepreneurship, which I'm a doctor in entrepreneurship. For that, you need freedom. You know, one of the other things that other slides or videos that you will see is where I talk very frankly about wherever I go, people sit and talk to me about things, because inevitably I am known or not known or whatever else. And before I know it, we're talking business, and they're bouncing 100 ideas off of me. So for that, you need freedoms. And these laws are not based on freedoms. They're based on correcting injustices, which are I think the injustices aren't even being understood correctly. Because most of the people that actually lived through it, those guys aren't even here anymore. I lived through it for the smallest latter part of it. I was born in the 80s, and I didn't even know what apartheid was. I only learned that later in life. So it's important to understand how laws are being used to correct the injustices. And that follows through everything. It's a little golden thread. If you look at everything that happens, it just pulls all those things together. And it's a government that's trying to control everything. And they make a lot of mistakes. And because they made that mistakes, you get desperate. So a person's just got to understand those things, take it to mind, and just sometimes you got to be bigger than what you think. And that's the reality of it. So guys, got your back, and everything will be okay. I'll see you in the next session. Have a good one.